Welcome! We're doing a quick video on using Configuration Manager to deploy Office 365 while using device-based activation. My name is Nash Fearson. I'm a Microsoft MVP for Enterprise Client Management, and I work as a Senior Systems Consultant for Now Micro. I get to work with a lot of K-12 and higher education customers who are using Office 365 and have already deployed it using user-based activation. Now that device-based activation is out, we're trying to help a lot of people get cut over to that because it's got a lot of benefits. This video kind of assumes you know a little bit about device-based activation and that you already know how to do Office 365 deployment. If you're new to deploying Office 365 at all, there's a lot of other information out there. But if you're trying to make the cutover from deploying Office 365 to doing it with device-based activation, you're going to get the benefit of seeing the behavior like you used to see with Office 2016 or 2013 deploying the full MSI bits, where the end user doesn't have to log in order to activate the application. The big benefit to organizations with shared use devices is that when you use a lot of computers, you don't end up burning up potentially your 5 personal licenses while trying to log into organization-owned devices. So we are recommending, as we go through with our education customers, that they cut over their organization-owned devices from user-based activation to device-based activation. There's a lot of good information out there on the internet that Microsoft has already generated on how device-based activation works and how to go and set it up for one device. We're hoping that this video fills in that last mile for getting it to the rest of your machines. The links you see on the screen here get you to pretty much everything that you could want to know about it. We're going to quick though review this first link, the guide for getting your first device deployed, because it'll go through some of the prereqs. That first document is going to tell you how to sign up for device-based activation, which does require you to sign in with a global administrator to your tenant. And once you sign up for it, it's going to give you a tenant ID, a long GUID, and a key, which is also going to be a long GUID. We're going to need those things to go and do the actual conversion to device-based activation. It also has a bunch of example command lines. If I quick flip over to that Word document here, there are a couple of pieces in that document that talk about just general Office 365 deployment pieces. Like how to go and get the setup files and the deployment tools, how to make your configuration file. But what we really care about is the stuff down at the bottom where we talk about how to use the OPP transition.exe executable to swap existing devices over to Office 365 using device-based activation, or to take an Office 365 device which was set up for user-based activation and switch it to be set up for device-based activation. I'm going to flip over to our ConfigMan environment in a second, but the first scenario we want to talk about is our new workstations during operating system deployment, because this is where we're seeing our customers have the most confusion. When you're doing when you're building your reference image using Configuration Manager, MDT, or whatever method you're using, and putting Office 365 in that reference image, use your typical install bits for that, right? Leave that as the Office user-based activation. However, on the deploy side, in your deploy task sequence, you're going to want an extra step in there that uses the OPP transition executable to set the device up for device activation. When you run this command, it is going to go and take that specific device, contact your tenant, and provision a device account. All right, that's why that can't be in your reference image. Once we've run this command, and then a user goes and first launches one of the Office applications, instead of the end user being prompted for their credentials to go and activate against your tenant, the device is going to automatically go and reach out to Office 365 and do activation at that point. Continuing off of that, we've got the scenario of you've already deployed Office 365 in your environment, and you want to swap those machines from being user-based over to device-based. Well, it's the same thing. We're going to run that same command line you would run in your deploy task sequence on all of your existing devices. This is why we'd typically build a package and program for it, because that package and program would work both in the deploy task sequence and on existing machines. If I flip over to our remote desktop session, we see we've got a package that we've just named Activate Office 2016 Click to Run. We have a single program with a single command line in it. We wrapped that with a batch file purely because it shows better on the video here. But if we call opp-transition.exe, feed it a tenant ID, a key, and your domain, and the note with this domain is that this isn't your friendly domain name. This is your on Microsoft domain name. Make sure that you're using whatever you have set up for your organization for your onmicrosoft.com domain name. And then give it the no install and no uninstall switches, so that because we're telling it not to reinstall Office 365 or uninstall previous versions. And then we throw a verbose on there so that we get full logging in case there are any issues with configuring it for device-based activation. This one command line against opp-transition.exe is all that you need to go and handle the deploy task sequence, where you've already got Office 365 baked into your reference image, or taking existing devices and converting them from user-based activation to device-based activation. The next scenario is to go and deploy Office 365 to machines that don't already have Office 365. So either there is no version of Office installed, or they've got another version of Office installed, like the Office 2016 or 2013 bits from the original MSI installer. We still have the option of using your normal Office 365 install and then just running that command line to swap it over to device-based activation. That's still going to work just fine there. But we do have a second option where opp-transition.exe is acting as a wrapper for the Office 365 click-to-run installer. And we can go and use the command line we showed before, but just omit the no uninstall and no install switches, which means it's going to do a full install of Office 365, and it's going to uninstall all the other versions of Office that are on it. If we look over at our remote session again and look at applications, we see that we built an application object that will do the full install of Office 365 with device-based activation. If we look at the deployment type for it, we're going to see it looks like the typical install you'd expect. However, when we do the command line, we see that this command line is doing the same thing as before with tenant, key, and domain, but we omitted that no uninstall and no install flag. Without those, this is going to do a full install and clean up any other versions on there. In addition, you're going to use a similar detection method that we would have used before, where we're just checking for that the click-to-run installer is fully installed on there and that the version is at least what we would expect to have with this installer. So this application is good for deploying it to existing devices that either don't have Office or have other versions of Office that need to get upgraded or switched over to the click-to-run installer with device-based activation. And that covers the majority of our scenarios that we see our customers using. If you have any additional questions, feel free to check us out at nowmicro.com or email us at sales@nowmicro.com. Have a good rest of your day.